Thane, welcome to the Green Gauge. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And for someone encountering your work for the first time, would you be able to describe your ELA in the simplest possible terms, or
Yeah,
you
sure.
LAH? I'm not sure how you
Yeah, you
how
said it
you.
right there. Yeah, we call it ELA. And ELA is an acronym, and it's actually short for the equation of life and abundant happiness. ELA. And ELA is a philosophy that I developed that came from an accidental drowning. I've lived a precarious life. Happy to talk about it as we were talking earlier before we got on the show. But I had a near death experience where I drowned in my swimming pool and I left reality. And I would tell you I was an atheist before that. And after that, I'm definitely not an atheist, but I don't necessarily subscribe to what I'm just going to call traditional religious frameworks. I'm a big believer in spirit. I have a huge understanding of what happens when we die because I've been there and I remember everything. But I came back from that experience and realized that I didn't have a place in corporate America anymore, that I needed to spend the rest of my life not only healing myself, but helping other people learn how to stand up and heal themselves. So I started a company. It's called Is Pure Love. And what we do is we change people's behavior through lived experience because that is how we learn as human beings. When we learn things, traditional channels by sitting and reading or watching, we generally only record about 10 to 15% of it. That's what the numbers actually show. But when we experience something, when I'm incorporating many things, including the body, we remember with a lot more vigor, and it's actually 90%. So that's why traditionally most transformation and work that people do trying to change behavior doesn't stick because you can't learn it until you're actually doing it. So how could I learn a behavior by just reading about it? Yeah, you're not. And that's the problem. You've got to bring the body into the picture because the body's actually driving the body is driving things. And when the body's in charge, you can lose because the only thing the body's interested in is protecting itself. So that means if it's got to lie to you, it will, right? So I am an experiential neuroscientist that creates an experience that teaches you how to heal from every self limiting belief that's in your mind. And we do it through neuroscience. It's the study of the nervous system and how it reacts with the brain. You can't just change the brain, you have to change the nervous system and tie it to a new emotional response. And there's some specific science that we can talk about, should you want to talk about, because I don't want to bore your listeners, um, about the psychology and how it works. But I completely went, so just for me, my story, I was abused as a little kid by members of the church, and I spent most of my life running. I became a drug addict, I became a sex addict, and life didn't work. And then I had a near death experience that changed everything, everything. And now, today, I don't do corporate America anymore because I don't care about that. What I care about is people and living the life that you can live because I thought I was unhealable. And I actually had people tell me that I would never be free because of the severity of the conditions that I had. And that was something you don't say no to me. That is not an option. Okay. Being told that I would be encumbered by what happened to me as a kid the rest of my life was not something I was willing to accept. And so that's when I leaned into experiential neuroscience and I discovered it's an interesting way to actually train the body and the mind at the same time. And that's what makes it unique. So, there in a nutshell, that's my story.
And could you also talk about this concept of the laboratory and how did your own life become a sort of laboratory for this work?
Yeah, great question. So, the first time I got help, it was after a suicide attempt. I was in my late 30s, and that day was a bad day for me. I had been kind of collecting pills one at a time, so that I could have the perfect bottle of death, just being honest. And so I washed that bottle down with a fifth of alcohol and expected not to wake up. But I got a text message as I was literally laying there to die. And the text message said, "Where are you?" And I had forgotten that I was traveling and I was supposed to meet a friend of mine for dinner that Monday. And I texted him back and I said, "I'm sorry, I won't be meeting you. I'm not the man you think I am." That's what I said. And he was smart enough to know that that was actually not something that a healthy man would say. And he took action and he saved my life. So it was that suicide attempt, which was a wake up call about everything that had happened to me, because nobody knew anything. I'd never told a single person in the world what had happened to me as a child. I carried it my whole life. I hid it. And that was a mistake, because it came back and it bit me in the butt in the ugliest of ways. So I tried traditional therapy. I was super grateful for EMDR. That was an experience that helped me start to unlock the subconscious things that were in my mind. That
Could
was
you
actually,
explain EMDR a little bit?
yeah. So EMDR is it's a technique that a therapist or a psychologist can use where they're manipulating. So you actually sit still and then they'll hold something and they'll make you move your eyes left and right. So you move your eyes, and as they're moving your eyes, your body will begin to notice the cadence. Your brain will go into a different kind of thinking mode. And when they stop, they'll say what's coming up for you. And whatever your subconscious thought is, that's what you give up. And it's a way of getting subconscious memories out of the brain. And it works because that's where I found out what happened to me as a kid, because I had no memory of it. So EMDR unlocked one of the shadows as a technique. It's actually a neuroscience technique to manipulate the subconscious to give a random thought. And from that random thought, I was able to uncover what happened to me when I was a little kid. But here's the problem. Most traditional therapy is only going to work with what your subconscious mind is willing to give up. But you got to remember that the subconscious mind, its job is to keep us safe no matter what. So that means our subconscious mind will lie to us if it needs to protect us. So you can't take what the body always serves up as accurate. And that's the problem that I uncovered, that my body was full of all kinds of responses that were inaccurate because I had formed those opinions and those stories from my childhood. So traditional therapy helped, but it didn't get the job done. And then ultimately, I ended up being over medicated, because the answer, unfortunately, in most of today in today's world is we'll just give you a pill. So I ended up with 7 pill boxes. I was over medicated. I couldn't function. I could barely survive. I could barely maintain my career. Ultimately, that's what lost me my career. Too many pills being given by too many doctors, and that's the truth. So, for me, it was one prescription that I took that one day where I had that seizure and I drowned in the pool and I died. I flat out died. And from that day forward, when I came back, I was different. And I realized the only way I was going to learn, I had to pour myself into experiential neuroscience, because traditional therapy and medication did not heal me permanently. It helped, but it did not give me the tools to be able to stand up in the world and say, I'm no longer encumbered by my past. So that's been my healing path, because it didn't work. I can't tell you how much money I spent and hours in sessions. And I'm not saying that there's not value there. There absolutely is. But there's more to healing the mind than just that. And you have to heal it as an experience. And that's why what I've created at my company, ispureLove.com, is being studied clinically because of the results that we're having with the people that we work with.
And how do you see your pain? Do you see it as being something that you integrated, or did you kind of transform it, or was it something more complex? How do you put that into?
So you got to remember that in every moment in time, there is always 2 things present. There is always a positive thing present and always a negative thing. And our body is naturally designed to the negative because it's easy and it's part of the protection mechanism of our species. But until you learn to let that go and live in the present moment and get out of your head and enjoy what's actually in front of you, you're missing out on most of life. You're actually living in your default mode network, and your body is running your life, not your soul. And that's the difference. When you understand that the body and the subconscious mind is separate from me, I'm the observer, I'm the soul. The body and the mind is just a meat suit. That's just an extension, but it isn't me. You see, that's the difference. If you want to heal yourself, you have to understand that you, as the soul, the electrical energy that runs your body, you're the observer. So once you make that distinction and you understand that your body, your subconscious mind isn't necessarily accurate, and it doesn't have to be you, you begin understanding what metacognition is, which is the ability to analyze your body and your own behavior real time and adjust accordingly. That's what true emotional intelligence is. It's being able to let the body serve up an emotion, and for you to be so strong to go, hey, body, thanks for serving up fear, but if I play fear right now, I'm going to lose. Oh, we got balloons. I don't know why my software does that. It's kind of uncanny, though. That's like, because sometimes
That was a good timing
it'll
for...
do, right, and it'll do fireworks. Like sometimes I don't know what the hand gesture is. It'll do fireworks. It always says thumbs up, though. Watch. See? Isn't that weird?
Beautiful.
Like, why does it do that? It's in my software, and I do not know where it comes from. Anyways, so that's my story. And that's how I help people heal. You have to experience it, right? Because the problem is the body, the experiences that the body holds on to are deeply ingrained because they were usually put there with intensive emotion. You can all remember when we were humiliated. We all remember. Why? Because it was humiliation. It was a deep emotional wound, and the brain said, don't ever forget that, because if you do it again, that's how you're going to feel. Well, so every time you experience that same thing because you failed once, that's what you're going to do. So what if I could experience the same thing in a safe way, and I could teach my body that the physiological response was in fact incorrect, and I could actually do the thing that I told myself I couldn't do when I was a little kid, because that's the reality, right? That's what self-limiting beliefs are. They are formed in our childhood when we make assumptions about life and we tell ourselves a story, and then pretty soon that story that we told ourselves because we're not good enough becomes a fact, and then we adopt it and we embody it. And it came from an immature mind that doesn't have long-term decision-making skills, and unless we had emotionally intelligent parents that taught us to stand back up, and that failure was actually feedback, then we stayed stuck. Because that's really the truth, isn't it, Tom? Failure is feedback. If I look to see what I could learn from this, I learn how to integrate it. And once
100%.
I learn how to integrate it, I stand on top of it. So that's ultimately what I've done. I used to carry all my trauma. I used to say they were bags, and I carried them with me. And now those bags, I processed them. I got rid of all the guts in those suitcases. It's all gone now. So I put those suitcases underneath me, and I stand on top of them. And I walk on them. That's what I do today. I walk on my past because that's not who I am. It's behind me.
And would you go into what's happening in the brain a little bit when emotionally charged experiences become actual behavioral patterns?
Yeah. Okay. So generally speaking, we as human beings, we have a subconscious system that's constantly scanning for safety, right? There's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. And what it's doing is it's scanning the environment for threats. And when it finds a threat, it sends it over to another region of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is the fight or flight response. We all know where it is. We've all been there. So when the amygdala observes something coming from the reticular activating system, it says, this could come up and potentially harm us. We better start paying attention. So now the brain is escalated because it's in a learning mode, because it's identified something that could go wrong. Okay. So when it's now learning because something could go wrong, and then we fail, the brain records it with vigor. because you just failed in an emotionally salient situation. And that failure means bad for the human. That's what it means. So your subconscious records that as that subconscious memory, and it stays there unless I retrain the memory that came from the physiological response. You see? So when our brain experiences something that is in the field that could become dangerous, we open a very specific window in our mind. Okay, there's a sense of there's some research. It's called memory reconsolidation. And so what the research shows us is that the brain actually enters a malleable state when there's enough perceived risk that it needs to start paying attention. So what I've learned is that every exercise that I create in my course that I teach people is it has to come from safety. Because if it's not safe, nobody's going to do it. So safety is number one. Number two is I have to have the brain experience something that it's going to predict wrong. All right? So the reason that's important is because I'm trying to force the brain to update its incorrect programming. So I want the brain to predict something that it's going to be wrong at. So in my exercises, I'm going to ask you to do something that is a little bit socially uncomfortable. Okay? Because if you're comfortable, you're not going to grow. I need you to be uncomfortable because I want your brain malleable. I want your brain paying attention. All right? So if I introduce a learning moment while you're in what's called the memory consolidation window, if I do it during that time frame and I deliver a result that is opposite of what the brain predicted, it forces the brain to update it to the new memory. So in an experience, imagine if I hand you a card and I said, today, I'm going to have you do an exercise where you lose your right hand. Okay, so there's a card in my deck called Lose a Limb. So as soon as I play that card on you, initially, your brain already went to, oh, no way, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to.
No, that sounds
I'm not
quite horrifying.
Yeah, I'm not going throughout the day with the ability to not use my right hand because I'm right-handed. And Thane, you're asking me now to go into the world with a sock on my hand. Yeah. So why are you resisting putting the sock on your hand and going into the world? Well, people are going to stare at me. Yeah, I know. So why are you afraid if people stare at you? Well, I don't want them looking at me. So you're afraid. This is actually fear, isn't it? You're actually afraid of being seen. Why? Did you fail at something when you were a little kid? And that fear of failure is actually what's holding you back right now. And that's why you're experiencing fear, because it's coming from your body. So in Lose a Limb, you're already showing me that you have a fear of being seen in public. So we're going to do this exercise and we're going to put that sock on your hand and you're going to go out into the world with an athletic sock on your hand. And people are going to ask you what's going on. And you're going to have to communicate with them and be comfortable with that. That is how we learn. All right. So the next thing I'm going to ask you about 2 hours into that exercise, I'm going to ask you to put that right hand in your pocket and it's going to stay there for the rest of the day. And you get to ask people to help you accomplish the task that you would normally need 2 hands to do. So what does somebody learn in an exercise like that? Well, if I got to relearn, I have to learn that I have to rely on other people for help. And a lot of people struggle through life because they don't have the confidence to ask for help. And it's just because they've got a story in their past where they asked for help and they didn't get help. And so they're like, why should I ask for help? Nobody's going to help me. And so the rest of their life, that's the story that they say. So in this exercise, in 6 hours, you're going to learn that with my hand in my pocket, that there's plenty of people in the world that'll help me. And I can ask them in a kind and gracious way, and they will help me. So by the end of the day, what have I learned from that one exercise? I learned that I can be humiliated by wearing a sock or pantyhose on my hand in public. And I can actually laugh about it now because I realize that as stupid as I reacted the first time Thane asked me to do it, I now realize that I had nothing to be afraid of. That came from my subconscious mind, from my prior programming that I put there as a kid. That's the truth. So I've learned that I can actually be a little bit humiliated and still be comfortable. Well, that's a great lesson to learn. All right, what else did you learn? Pro-social emotion. I learned that if I connect with people and I ask for help, that they'll actually help me. And I can actually
Yeah,
get stuff done.
that experience is
Yes,
quite transformative
that's
to
exactly right.
go out into the world and
Yes. So
be
the
helped
memory
and
consolidation.
communicate that.
Yeah. So the memory consolidation window was open for 6 hours during that exercise. And at the end of that exercise, you closed it by saying, I completed humiliation. And I also learned that I can ask people for help and they'll help me. And I shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed to ask for help. What an amazing lesson. And better yet, I had a great experience today. I met some amazing people out in public who helped me because I only had one hand. So I had a great experience.
Right.
I realized that people in the world are actually kind because we've forgotten that. After COVID, we've forgotten that. People are afraid of each other. It's true. So that's an example of the psychology. So what happened is that physiological response when I first played the car on you, which was fear, is now rewritten to a new memory that I experienced. And the brain updated. You will remember that experience. Now, what if you would have read about it? You wouldn't have retained it. But you lived this. So you know you can do it again. That's why experiential is so powerful. So when you do these exercises multiple times, which is what I do, I call it the chrysalis, you're working on these exercises for 5 days, working with me. There's 101 exercises in the deck of cards. And the other thing is, the end result is always love, kindness, and gratitude because they're the strongest teachers, right? Like, who knew? Like, before I got into neuro,
Why do you think that is? Why do you think love, gratitude are such powerful kind of adapters of human behavior and results?
there's something in our species where when we experience unconditional love, okay, it heals the mind. It literally heals the mind. I cannot tell you. I've been doing this now for almost a year and a half, and I've taught many people how to do this and gone through the course. And the thing that always blows me away is that the greatest teacher of all is love. Because when we learn through these exercises that love still exists with every human being, and I teach you how to find it, because that's what gratitude is. Gratitude is the spark and fuel for love. It's the most important word in the world. It really is, because without gratitude, you can't create love with anybody. You can't. But if I treated you with respect and kindness through gratitude, would you let me love you as a stranger if I treated you with respect and kindness? Of course you
I
would.
would try.
Yeah. And that's why gratitude is so important. It's literally, it is neuroscience. Study after study. When you practice gratitude, it silences the amygdala. Okay? Because the amygdala is firing right now. And when I use gratitude by thanking my body, that's literally what I teach. Hey, body, thanks for serving up fear. So I'm using gratitude on my own body. And by using gratitude on myself, I'm doing what? Quieting my own amygdala. That's what gratitude does. It quiets the amygdala, which is the fear, flight, not thinking, and it moves the thought because the prefrontal cortex it comes online and it starts becoming rational. So it's saying, yeah, I might have felt fear here, but I'm now 10 years older than when that happened. And I've learned a couple of things since then. So thank you, body, for serving up fear and attaching the wrong story to it. Because what I've now learned is, yeah, that's not going to be the same. No, I can do this. And then you go do it. And then it forces the brain go, oh, we messed up. We predicted that wrong. Update the tapes. Because if Thane hits that again, don't tell him no or caution. He can do this. So that's ultimately what you have. When you finish my course, you have a brain that is driven upon pro-social emotions and pro-social neuro connection activity. So your brain starts serving up the amazing things in your life. We call those glimmers instead of what most people experience in life, which is a trigger. It's the opposite, right? A trigger is negative. A glimmer is positive. So today, I teach what's called glimmer surfing. I teach people how to ride the waves of life so that happiness is your core emotion 24/7. Like, it doesn't mean that bad things don't happen to me. Of course they do. But I've learned how to balance my emotional energy in the moment to never let it take my anger. Like, why would I get mad? There's no reason to get mad, right? Anger is a choice. Anger is a choice. It is a choice.
And if someone completes your process successfully, what would you say changes first? Is it their thoughts, their emotional regulation? Is it their relationships, their identity?
All of that. But it starts with awareness. So the first thing I train is awareness, and I use a bracelet to train that. You're looking at it. Okay. I can use this bracelet, teach you a protocol, and within about 48 hours, I will literally retrain your brain to stay present. So awareness has to come first. Most people are not aware. So I start with awareness. Then I move to emotional regulation. I teach you how to handle what's called, we all have 0.25 seconds. That's the amount of time that exists between when the amygdala has identified a story it's going to play and when it actually executes. So if you're in the present moment and you're not in your default mode network, you actually have control of the amygdala. So I teach you a little technique. We've all got 0.25 seconds. Shake your bracelet, boom, move the thought over to the subconscious or out of the subconscious mind into the prefrontal cortex and begin rationalizing it. Talk about it. Talk it through. Say, hey, thanks, body, for serving this up, but that's not going to get me where we need to go. So that leads to emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence ultimately leads to metacognition, which is the highest form of intelligence, right?
Define metacognition as well, and like how it
Yeah.
integrates and fits in that framework.
Sure. So metacognition is basically the highest form of intelligence in that it's a human being that is so hyper aware of everything that's going on in his system that he can adjust accordingly real time and change the trajectory of reality. It is the highest form of intelligence. It is the most difficult to master. But once you become good at it, it changes your life. So that's also part of what I teach, is to bring you into metacognition, to understand that you, the observer, the soul, the energy that runs your body, you're separate from your body and your subconscious mind, which is true. And once you get that, now you are truly metacognitive.
That's beautiful. I like the explanation of how you kind of interrupt those automatic fear responses in real time.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that you're using a bracelet?
Yeah.
Or is it?
Yeah, it does. So, because the bracelet gives the cognitive stimulation, right? You see these little things that hang? Okay, so what I do with my, like, to train awareness is there's a protocol I teach, right? So once I put this on, you want to wear this on your non-dominant wrist, okay? And this bracelet's specifically designed for me, and it also has the appropriate amount of weight because I want it to stimulate my body, okay? So when I do this, I'm literally breaking the thought process, because you can't, when you have an anger response, right? Like, for everybody that's listening, you can literally go to Amazon. You can order not my custom-made bracelet, but you can order one that's going to get the job done, okay? Put it on your non-dominant wrist, okay? And it's very, very simple. If you're a hothead, okay, which I used to be, the minute you feel your anger rising and you've got one of these bracelets, start shaking your bracelet. Start shaking it, okay? The minute you start shaking your bracelet, okay, you're disrupting that amygdala, because the amygdala can't focus on the anger while you're sending the body a signal to shake the bracelet. You see? It's an interrupt sequence, because the brain's going to automatically keep going down that path unless I interrupt the thought. And I can interrupt the thought by shaking the bracelet, okay? The bracelet also gives me tactile stimulation because I can feel it, okay? When you feel the body connects to a brain in a different way. So that's why I train with a bracelet, and I train awareness with that bracelet. Then I also teach you balanced thought using the bracelet. Every time you have a negative thought, you shake the bracelet and you balance the thought with a positive thought. What I'm looking for is for you to bring your negative thought to neutral, Okay. So I got to have enough positive in this moment to balance the negative thought. Because if I don't balance the negative thought, my brain will put that negative thought away in my subconscious with a check mark next to it that says it's okay to use it. Because that's what your brain will do. So when you learn balanced thought, again, using the bracelet, during the week, it's going to take you a little bit of practice to get good at balanced thought. But by the end of the week, you'll have that habit mastered. Look, at the end of the day, we're all monkeys. That's the truth. Our bodies are just monkeys. We're all monkeys with a really bright brain. Okay. So how do you train a monkey? With a banana. How do you train a human? With a bracelet and a reward. What's the reward? Love. That's the reward.
And gratitude.
And gratitude. Yeah. You get to love through gratitude. That's how you get there. So you train a human by exposing it to risk and giving it love instead. That's literally what I do. Every exercise is designed to be safe, a little bit risky because I want you a little bit uncomfortable. And the reason I want you uncomfortable is because I want your brain to enter that malleable state where it's paying attention. And then it's going to write the wrong story. Every time it does, trust me, every exercise is designed for you to resist it. You're going to find that self-limiting belief, and then you're going to have the confidence because I'm going to teach you how to find confidence. You're going to power through it. And then you're going to get that pro-social emotion that's at the end of the exercise, which is always love, kindness, gratitude, connection. And the brain says, wait a minute, we predicted failure and this is going to be horrible. And we actually had fun and that was actually cool. Okay. Thank you, body, for serving up fear, but you now know that that's the wrong story. So update it with this story because this is how I'm going to be moving forward. You literally just trained your brain how to have a new response. And that's how you change people, right? I couldn't change. I did decades of therapy, decades. And I would tell you I got to about 75%. I would tell you that was the best I could do. Today, I'm 200%. This version of myself is way better than any version ever of my prior self. And the only difference is I don't have fear anymore. I've retrained my body to understand that fear just means caution. It just means there's something in my field I need to pay attention to or I could learn from. But it doesn't mean failure. It does not mean failure. Probably the greatest thing from my near-death experience that I share with every audience, I lived my life as a victim. I showed up that way and I was angry most of my life. If you were my family or friends, I treated you with love and kindness. But if you were a member of the public and you crossed me, I was so full of anger, piss, and rage. I was a total Karen. Be honest, I was not a nice person, not to the public. But that's what's so ironic today is I love the public and I love people. I love people because inside of every single one of us, we've all got some damage. We've all got some crap. And man, it's a beautiful world when we can let our crap go and just be ourselves exactly as we are. Because that's who I am today. Perfectly authentic, 100% happy, and neutral. That beautiful space in the middle, right? Like that's what matters.
Right. And I want to bring in a little like concept of leadership, and if you can talk about what that looks like in like grounded in the nervous system as opposed to trying to kind of control and
100%.
trying to
So I have
on top in that sense.
Yeah. So I have my company is divided into silos depending on where it is. So we have a program that we teach in business that changes culture, and it's called Elevate. And the whole purpose behind Elevate is to give the employees the ability to balance their own emotional energy. So what that means is if I can balance my emotional energy at home, when I get to work, I'm not bringing that garbage with me because we've all done it. And then we show up at work and we're not focusing on the business, right? I will tell you, as being a leader from corporate America, prior to learning this, I was the kind of leader that would bark at you. And if you didn't get the job done, I would make it even more difficult on you because you're clearly not performing and you can't keep it up. That was me. I drove you into the ground. That was not good leadership. It was not. Today, I rule with empathy, love, and kindness. Okay. So I've learned that people will respond way more to empathy and kindness than they will being yelled at and managed by statistics. The greatest gift I give CEOs is empathy. Because when you understand empathy, now you're a true leader. That's the truth.
And would you measure, for example, like emotional intelligence or psychological safety in the workplace? How do you measure it without kind of reducing it to like one metric?
You're going to love this. Are you ready? Okay. So we use AI. So I have a partnership with a company called workplace.io. And they have a software that I can install on my client's computer system. And it's going to analyze every communication going to and from that computer and every computer that is connected to it. Okay. It's all done anonymously. Nobody knows that the data is being collected. And as the employer, you cannot get to the data. Okay. So nobody can be singled out. But what I can do is I use AI to monitor every word being communicated in the company. And from those words, there are 1,200 signal paths that the software will analyze. So I actually give the company a dashboard that measures their culture real time. So if you got a project that's failing, I will pick it up in the dialogue between all the managers talking about the project is failing. And I will bring it to the attention of management and will also show you why it's failing. So I have a tool that literally is going to change corporate America. And I've had a partnership with these guys. They're really, really bright. So I use culture and AI to measure. And then we use the experiential learning to actually overcome and train the employees how to better manage their emotional energy and stay present. But we measure it with AI.
It's like a very, I guess, evolved form of sentiment analysis
Absolutely.
that you're doing.
Yes, that's right. So it's using NLP, right? We're using neuro-linguistic programming. We're taking words and the association of words, putting into a computer algorithm, and there's patterns that develop in communication. That's what AI is. And once it identifies the pattern, it can identify and tell you what the pattern means. So we're able to pick up on things in culture inside of companies that we've never been able to do before. Because most culture change, companies have employee satisfaction surveys they send out. And we all know most of the time the results come 60 days after the survey was done. And most employees don't necessarily tell the truth on those surveys because they're afraid of being fired. So how good is the data? It's not. And that's why most companies, when they say we need to change culture, they struggle because they don't know how to measure it. Well, I can measure it and I can make it anonymous so nobody gets hurt. But who wins? The employees win and the companies win. Because the employee's going to find all the bottlenecks that the company needs to remove. That's also coming out of the culture process. We're going to find all the roadblocks in your company.
Yeah, it's also unusual to talk about love and gratitude, I think, in a business context. So I'm wondering, why do you think those words make some people uncomfortable? And
yeah, what's interesting? I actually shared a story on a podcast recently. My grandfather was a salesperson, and he had sold some equipment to a factory, and he was babysitting me. I was a young adolescent, and I went with him on a sales call. And it was because this machine had gone down, and my grandpa had a spare part. So we went over to the factory, and we went in there, and I remember kind of just, he introduced me. This is my grandson, Thane. I was named after him. His name was Thane. And I watched him interact with this plant manager about this broken machine. And what was interesting for me as a youth, as I remember that at the end of the interchange, the man patted my grandfather, shook his hand, said, "Thank you so much for making a priority." And then this is what he said. He said, "I love you, Thane." And I remember that moment in time. I walked away from that. We walked out of the factory, and I said, "Grandpa, you don't know that man. We're not family." And he said, "Love is the most important thing that binds us all. There's no reason why we can't love in business." And I'll never forget that. So when I close every email, even in corporate America, I sign my email with kindness, love, and gratitude. That is my
Yeah, I can confirm.
every single one of them. Yep. And it's amazing what happens when you start putting with kindness, love, and gratitude as your signature in your email. Watch what happens to the people that interact with you. Okay. There's no reason you can't have love at work. Love comes in many forms. We all know that. But why can't we have love inside of the office? We can. We can learn to set aside our emotional differences and treat each other with respect. The reason we don't is because we all have dysregulated nervous systems that are tied to wrong memories. That's why we change culture at the employee level, not the corporate level. That's the mistake of every culture change company I've come across. They try and treat communication between departments, which is a waste. You got to fix the person first. Then the department naturally fixes itself. That's what we do.
And what would you say to someone who wants transformation, but they're afraid of being changed by someone else's system as opposed to?
Yeah. So here's what I would tell you. When you heal from within, the course that I teach, you
Yes.
heal yourself. I don't heal you. I teach you how to heal yourself. I'm going to teach you to find your shadows. I'm going to teach you to find the confidence to overcome your shadows. And then I'm going to teach you a new ending. And the new ending is always love, kindness, and gratitude every time. And every time I do that, each time I complete an exercise where I'm wrong and I'm right and I'm shown that I can do this, the brain updates. That's why we do it this way.
And if you had one message for the nervous system, what would that message be?
My message for my nervous system? Okay, you're going to laugh. So, my name is Thane, okay? And I am the observer of my body and my subconscious mind. And in my world, my body and my subconscious mind has a different name. So, when I need my body to do something, I talk to my body and my body has a name, and my body's name is Frank. So I literally say, "Hey, Frank, like, I know you're surfing up fear right now and you want to go kick somebody's ass, but that's really not going to be a good emotion to play here. So let's shake our bracelet. Let's get rid of that anger. Let's control the amygdala." Okay. Yep. And as I'm sitting here thinking, anger is not going to help me right now. In fact, humor is probably the right thing to play. Quit stopping my bracelet. Amygdala's let go. Okay. What can I do in this situation that would be funny or humorous instead of anger? I need to play that. Okay, I'm going that well. That's how you do it.
Thank you so much, Thane.